What do you think of the bringing back the death penalty?
Couldn't disagree with you more. Sorry to jump in and go full on it. It seems fundamentally flawed. State-sanctioned killing of a person to try and prove that killing is wrong is it's paradoxical. There's no evidence that it ever brings down rates of homicide, so it doesn't act as a deterrent. There are arguments about the cost, which actually seems like a really cheap argument to bring into it, but also if you look at the cost for finding someone guilty and executing them in America, it runs into the hundreds of millions. This is one of the reasons that New York and New Jersey got rid of the death penalty, was because of the cost. So it feels like, fundamentally, I would rather be on the side of history that says this is wrong to do.
So you think that the reason that I would want the death penalty is to show that they've made a mistake and that fundamentally killing is wrong? No, that's not my reasoning. My reasoning is because they will serve no purpose, in a sense, because they are going to be incarcerated, in which we will be paying for. Then they will never get out of jail. So what's the point? I don't think there's any point in it. Why should we be funding this? And I do actually think it's more expensive to keep someone in prison. I think it's about it's about 40 grand or something, or maybe something like that a week or a year or whatever. But it's too much. What do you think?
If this was a trial and you put together a very potent case for the prosecution, but part of your reasoning, Nana, was that you said if there's no chance of rehabilitation. So at what point do you determine that there is no chance of rehabilitation? You can't determine that at the trial, can you? Because rehabilitation can take a long time. It can take many, many years. So at what point do you determine that there is no chance of rehabilitation?
Well, I think, again, you have a jury, right? So you'd have a jury of people who would determine from what they've seen in terms of these crimes whether they believe this person will be able to be rehabilitated.
Well, they're not experts.
But the others...
though, are they?
Yeah, but you have to understand that there will be experts at that trial who will give information. And I ultimately think that the death penalty is actually it's a kinder thing to do than leaving this person to live. And, you know, actually, there was one case in America in particular where the guy actually said, look, the kindest thing to do would be to kill me.
Well, that's one guy.
Yeah, but that's one guy. But that is one case. It's still a case.
But since the 70s, there's been over 100 people in America who have then been found innocent after serving some time on death row. I'm sure they would say the kindest thing wouldn't have been to get this sorted years before.
Well, part of my argument is that you'd have to know they 100% did it. There's no, and with these ones and the ones I've highlighted, they are people who've actually put things, they've filmed themselves, they've actually got images of them doing it. And actually what tends to happen is they go to prison, they go to jail, and then they're usually killed by the prisoners in the prison.
Well, so, that's not usually killed.
In many cases for paedophilia, they can be killed in prison by those in prison.
Well, that's not usual, though, is it? I mean, it's a rare case.
So I'll take away the word usual. But in many cases, they are killed by those in prison, especially with things like paedophilia.
Well, I can't remember the last time there was a paedophile killed in prison. They're put in separate wings for their own protection. Well, so I can't... They're not in the general prison population, the nonces.
Well, the one I just mentioned, actually, he was killed and murdered in prison.
But that's not an argument for the death penalty. That's an argument to try and stop violence in prisons.
No, it's not an argument for that. I'm just saying that what often happens with paedophiles is that they are killed in prison by the inmates. My argument is that they should not... I would just execute them and get them, because I think it's a waste of money. They cannot be rehabilitated. We know from evidence that it's very difficult to rehabilitate a paedophile. There was an argument for castration, but even then it's been proven that that doesn't work. But there are certain crimes where I believe the death penalty...
But moving away from paedophilia, if a man violently rapes and then murders a woman, do you think that there is a possibility for that man to be rehabilitated? We have statistics to say it's difficult for paedophiles because they have their hardwiring all messed up.
Look, OK, so in this case, right, so in this case... specifically, so I would go case by case. You couldn't have all paedophiles, all this. It has to be case by case with everything. But in this instance, this person, he's a necrophiliac, so he's been, having sex with people who are no longer with us. He's also killed many people, and they're even saying they have no idea how many more he's killed. And he's been doing this for many, many, many years. This person is somebody who's proven to be guilty, and for somebody like that, I would absolutely say...
I wouldn't shed a tear if that lad was
I would absolutely say...
Wouldn't shed a tear.
But see, that's my point. For somebody like that, that's what... You couldn't have all murderers or all...
Where do you draw the line? What about drug dealers who blight communities and people overdose on the cheap heroin that they import?
No,
what about all of those tragic deaths?
I've given you the examples of where I would believe...
But I'm asking how far... So you draw a line of paedophilia and murder.
You'd also have a jury, wouldn't you? So they would ascertain all the different elements of the case. So it wouldn't just be, oh, well, he's murdered this and he's murdered that. It'd have to be somebody who we really believe there is really no more hope for.
The jury already has the bar to go over, which is that of beyond reasonable doubt. So already that is a test which sometimes fails. So in that moment, when the jury gives its decision, they think they've gone beyond reasonable doubt. But the fact that anyone has ever later been found innocent proves that you can't be sure that you've achieved beyond reasonable doubt.
I think you can in these cases. The ones I've listed, I mean, come on. I've listed very specific cases. You know, if you want to muddy the waters and talk about cases where there's not enough evidence, no, absolutely not. You do not put the death penalty in a case where you don't have the information. That's ridiculous. But for the ones where you know they've actually got video footage, they've got images of what they've done, and it's so inhumane for them to have done those things and still literally appear to have no real empathy for their victims, then my worry is that people like this are beyond help and there's no purpose.
Is this a punishment or a deterrent? Because in America, as Stephen was saying,
it's a bit of both, though. It depends how you view it. For somebody who may be prepared to commit some form of murder, who isn't really, who's not all guns blazing, but is somebody who's prepared to commit murder, that might deter them. That could be a deterrent for somebody. But in the cases of these individuals, where the second individual that I spoke about, he was actually trying to crowdfund to sell his images. For these kind of people, this is specifically these people. It cannot be just anybody who's committed murder.
Let me ask you a question. Wouldn't you rather they got a kicking in prison, though, behind bars? Wouldn't you rather that they were given kickings?
But which one is crueler? You see, that's the thing.
But why do you care if it's cruel on the paedophile?
Well, because, as I said it's to me, I think it's the kindest thing to do.
Don't be kind to them.
No, but you... But exactly. See, for me, I'm saying, out of kindness, I would take these people out because they're only either going to harm somebody else. They are, as we've seen historically, in particular with paedophiles, they are beyond any sort of real rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So the kindest thing to do, in my eyes, would be that. But in yours, your kindest thing to do would be to let them stay in prison for years getting a kicking.
I'm suggesting that I'm not holding the interests of the paedophile. I don't care about their interests. I'm not thinking it would be kinder for them. I'm thinking that they're going to find out the hard way about how prison really is.
And also, this question is not about being kind to them or not. No one's disagreeing with the fact that these scum are scum. The question is, what benefits society more? And not having a death penalty seems like it benefits society more. There's no stats to say it acts as a deterrent. There's questions over the price.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you.
But you can't disagree with the statistics. In America,
the prisons... Let Len speak.
Sorry.
What statistics have you got?
In the fact that in America, the UN looked at it and there's no link between having a death penalty and reducing
where
rates
is the statistics? So you're just saying that, but where is it?
Well, I found them on the internet when I Googled it before I came on just to find out what the figures are. The figures aren't in debate here.
Well,
so
they
have in certain states, they have death penalties.
Right. Yeah.
In those states, there is not a lower rate of homicide because of the death penalty. Well, there are some states that have stopped having a death penalty and you've not seen the homicide rate change because of the stopping of the death penalty. That's my statistics to say that actually it's not acting as a deterrent.
Well, it could be a psychological edge that they had the death penalty and people still are deterred with that in their minds, I don't see any proper hard fact statistics.
It still remains unproven that you can claim that it's a deterrent.
What do you need to do to prove? I mean, why? What is it that would prove?
If you're questioning my statistics, you're also not bringing any statistics to prove your point.
I've not brought statistics to the case.
I know.
I'm simply saying, from what I've seen, if it were me, I would bring back the death penalty. I'm not bringing in statistics. I've chosen specific incidents, specific crimes, and I said for these particular people, I would put the death penalty for them.
Yeah, and I'm saying that doesn't necessarily benefit society. One issue would be a deterrent.
How do you know? What statistics have you got for that?
The ones I've just talked about.
Well, you haven't, because it just takes them out of the way.
Now that America is full of prisons. Yeah. Sorry, America is full of prisons with prisoners on death row. Now, surely that's fairly compelling evidence.
Not really. Why
is that not compelling? Because there are thousands of people waiting to, if you like, be put down like animals. Now, they've committed murder.
They have behaved like animals.
So it would suggest to me that at the point of the murder, that deterrent that you think it could be wasn't in their minds.
Well, how do you know that it couldn't be a lot worse than that? You're saying...
I don't.
Exactly, that's the point.
It could
be a lot worse.
But I think, on the balance of probability, if this was put in front of a jury, you know, you've got thousands of people on death row, and you ask a jury, do you think that the death penalty is a deterrent? On the balance of probability, I would suggest that out of those 12 men and women, they would say, well, it can't be a deterrent because there are thousands of people waiting to be killed.
Well, you don't know that. They might not say that.
But we're in a trial, though, aren't we?
You're saying they might say that.
Yes.
But perhaps they had that in their mind and actually tried to evade being caught because there's a death penalty. A lot of people will actually move states. So you'll commit crime in one state, you'll move another to another, or commit crime in the other state where there isn't a death penalty. So I don't necessarily agree.
A trial is all about trying to persuade a jury about your evidence. And I think that's fairly compelling evidence to suggest, generally speaking, the death penalty isn't a deterrent.
I just don't agree with you.
If you were right, wouldn't it mean that America has a lower rate of homicide
Why?
than the UK because they have the death penalty and we
Not
don't?
necessarily. They have the right to bear arms, so they've got guns. So if somebody could take you out and take a load of people out with a machine gun, then I'd say you have to put those statistics into the whole thing that you're talking about as well.
It's one of the arguments against having the death penalty is because it brutalises society. Some people, I'm not necessarily saying I agree with these, say that because you then have the legal side of it, the law, the state that should be the highest standard, then is as brutal as the criminals, you perpetuate the idea that violence solves things.
I'm
not saying I believe that.
I depart from you at that point.
I don't agree with you at that point.
Yeah, I depart.
I don't agree with you at all.
But you haven't even asked me if I think that we should have the death penalty.
Well, I was coming to you, but you never... Do you think we should have it? Do you think we should, though?
I'm going to say yes.
Exactly,
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Now, Stephen's going to give me a right up in a second.
No, what's all right, you can fight me. I don't mind. I quite enjoy that.
I'll be sent down for it.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think there are certain cases where we should bring back the death penalty.
That's my argument.
But as a defence barrister, you're the prosecution, I was trying to undermine your arguments because we're in a court, if you like.
But it's not worked because you agree with me in the end.
We'll let the audience decide whether it's worked or not.
Yeah.
The prosecution barrister doesn't go, you're not working in the... You know, it's the jury that decides whether it's working.
Well, that's what I said before. That's what I was saying. It is the jury who would be given this evidence. But I think the option for the death penalty should exist, especially for the most heinous of crimes.
We agree.
That's what I'm saying.